This episode of Blue Plz was brought to you in part by Boz, who would like to congratulate the Edge of Insanity Guild on Bloodhoof US for 5 years of rambunctious raiding and fun fellowship. You guys are the best. See you at the 24-hour Raidathon tonight.
And so, it begins. Dark were the skies and chill was the wind as the land was covered in a veil of malice. Across the hill did ride a dread army of the night, cloaked in mist and fog, prepared to rain down death and destruction upon the land. And the people did crowd for a savior, a noble soul to save them from their impending demise. Just as it seemed all was lost, in strode a mighty hero, clad in shimmering metal from head to toe. Wielding a terrible broadsword, he did cleave his foes in two, smashing their ranks asunder with righteous fury. And when the day was done and the enemy strewn across the fields in pieces, the people did turn to the warrior and say, "We shall name this day in your honor. Speak unto us your wisdom." The warrior said one word that day: epic.
One man, one murloc, one giant angry badger. This is Blue Plz. It begins now. Yes, indeed. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is TotalBiscuit. This is Blue Plz here on CynicalBrit.com. With myself, TotalBiscuit. The date today is the 17th of September 2010. With TotalBiscuit. And the time is 8:05 in the British Isles. With TotalBiscuit. And 3:05 in the afternoon on the east coast of the United Biscuits. And in Europe it is, well, Central European summertime, which doesn't really cover all of it, but hey, it covers enough. It is Biscuit O'Clock. That's what I'm calling it right now. The European Parliament might have something to say about that, but I'm thinking, bearing in mind how slow they are to respond to issues, I'll get at least 6 months traction out of that before they realise what's wrong. With myself, TotalBiscuit. Welcome to the show, and what a show we have for you today. Well, we don't really have so much of a show. It's more like an average show, a run-of-the-mill show, if there is such a thing as a run-of-the-mill Blue Plz. I have to wonder what a run-of-the-mill Blue Plz actually sounds like. I can never really remember after shows. I tend to shout an awful lot and then sort of collapse or get something to eat and then collapse, and I don't really remember much of the show after that. I assume it's good, because I don't get that many complaints, but I can never be 100% certain, so you never know. It's like time disappears when you're doing this show. You do an hour and a half of this show, and then suddenly you forget that it's happened. It's like, well, where did that hour and a half just go? I remember the metal. Everyone remembers the metal, but once the show actually starts, no, it's gone. It's gone into a haze of nonsense. Oh well, I'm sure it'll work out. I hope. What have I got coming for you in the show today? Well, a few things, I guess. A few things. So, there are things that have happened over the last week, as you might imagine. There has been the introduction of a new secondary profession. It is called Archaeology. You may have seen my video on the matter. I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to discuss the possibilities and the possible expansion of archaeology in the future, since that's something the Ghostcrawler said that they wanted to do, and they are very happy with the way that archaeology's been received thus far. I'll also talk about whether or not it can be improved in some way, and indeed why other gathering professions should perhaps get a little bit more interesting in comparison. Also, where's me sheet? Yeah, here we go. Guild leveling. So apparently they have scrapped the top 10 contributors system. Apparently they did that some time ago, as it happens. I was not aware of this. Nobody was, in fact, as it happens. Like, yeah, we haven't had that for ages. Really? That's horrendous. So, yeah, we're going to be talking about that and whether or not the top 10 or 20 contributor system should have been in to begin with, and the kind of advantages that is going to give to zerg-guilds as opposed to slimline we don't suck guilds, and indeed ways to balance that. Yes, indeed. Also, trade skills give experience now, and as it turns out, that's caused a lot of whining and crying and complaining and screaming and bawling from the rooftops. At least if they could get to the rooftops. They get really tired after the second flight of stairs. Just sort of sit there and whine in the stairwell. It's not very effective, really. Nobody can hear it. And they eventually make their way back downstairs and they realise they've accomplished nothing. But hey, if they were energetic souls, if they were not lazy gamers, then perhaps they could go up to the top of the rooftops and bray and shout and scream. Bray, that's a good word. Some of you might not be aware that in the northeast of England, bray actually means beat up. And, of course, the dictionary definition of bray is... Somebody can tell me in the channel, I'm sure. I certainly hope so. And if you're not in the channel, well, you're a little bit late, because the channel did fill up before the show actually started. However, we do have a backup. Now, we are working on this as a beta, and eventually we're going to replace the whole thing with this. So what Ralph has managed to do is he's managed to fuse TinyChat's cameras with IRC. And you can go there by tinyurl.com/BritChat. That's tinyurl.com/BritChat for hot British chatting action. That will show the cameras that are currently up on the TinyChat, but it will give you access to the IRC instead. We will most likely be moving over to that entirely over the next couple of weeks, but we're still in the testing phases of it. So please, by all means, head over if you cannot already get into the chat room, the Tiny chat room. Tiny URL, or URL as I like to call it, and we'll continue to call it until I die, you bastards. tinyurl.com/BritChat. That will get you in there if you cannot already fit into the Tiny chat room, which is very, very much broken and very, very busy indeed. Wow, the spam of people joining the other chat room. Yeah, it's good stuff. Nobody can read anything in there. Oh, I love these live shows, man. Seriously, they're great fun. And particularly because you can look at the number of people that actually listen on a week-to-week basis, and it just keeps going up and up and up and up and up. Needless to say, our main server is already maxed out. Has been for quite some time. And if any of your friends are having trouble tuning in, I would recommend that they use the mirror link on the front page. And maybe don't use the on-site player, because it has been known to break from time to time. I would recommend that you download a proper application. My recommendation is Winamp, but some people have had success with iTunes and VLC as well. So, yes, there you go. It's good. It's very good. Wow, we've managed to fit 128 people into a... Sorry, 428 people into a 400-person limit channel. That's pretty impressive, folks. That is pretty impressive. Well done. Some of you must be really, really small. I imagine a few of you are getting flattened, honestly, by that. But hey, crushing. I've been blabbing on for too long, but I'd like to say one thing before I do go. I'd like to make a couple of announcements. First things first, ladies and gentlemen. So, it turns out the games companies are suddenly quite interested in talking to me. I can't imagine why that would be. I was looking at my statistics, and it would seem that The Witcher 2 interview got around 200,000 views in 3 days. And your average GameSpot or Game Trailers interview with so-called professional, air quotes, games journalists get around 65,000 views in 3 months. So it would seem that games companies are suddenly quite interested in talking to me. So I have a couple more interviews lined up that I'm happy to announce. The first thing is first. Guys from Calypso are going to come on to talk to me about the long-awaited sequel to Patrician 3. It's Patrician 4. Those of you in Germany may have already played it. It's not out in the English territories quite yet, but it will be very soon. It's a historical economic management game along the lines of Anno and Dawn of Discovery and all that good stuff. So hopefully you will enjoy that. And also, yes, that is not all. Arrowhead Studios would like to come along and talk to me about Magicka, which is a tongue-in-cheek 4-person co-op magic game whereby you slay many monsters, and apparently it is set in a generic fantasy world where you run around in your dressing gown. Yeah. Apparently we also filled BritChat. You can't fill BritChat, that's not even possible. It's an IRC room. How did... You're breaking QuakeNet! Stop this! Immediately! Oh yeah, okay, so that was one announcement. Second announcement... GameStation is launching in 3 days' time, and there will be many collabs. One of these collabs is going to be I Suck at StarCraft 2 featuring Husky StarCraft. I will be playing against Husky StarCraft. We will then go back and tell everyone how much we suck at StarCraft 2. And I'm spelling it, I Suck at StarCraft TOO, because I'm that goddamn clever. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, it is time. It's time for this.
Mail time.
That sounds like it's mail time. Here's the mail.
It never fails.
It makes me want to wag my tail. When it comes,
I want to wail.
Yes, quite. Mail time! That is the time where we read the mail, so I'm told. At least that's what I'm supposed to do. I got this little pamphlet from the broadcasting school that says, TotalBiscuit, you're an absolutely horrendous broadcaster. You don't have any idea what you're doing. Why do you use the silly Blues Clues theme? Because it's hilarious and it makes you mad. That's always good. Why do you do the mail time so late in the show? Why don't you just read emails throughout the show? Because it's stupid? Yes. Conventional broadcasting wisdom, ladies and gentlemen. So wonderful, is it not? But whatever the case, the pamphlet has been burned. Because I'm an arrogant bastard and I will not listen to my betters. Right, let's kick it off. Speaking of betters, this one is entitled The Calibre of WoW Gamers and the Right to Free Speech. Now, that would be very impressive if you hadn't spelt caliber wrong, but never mind, I will forgive you because you used the word caliber in the correct context, which is very, very rare. It's from a man by the name of Hootmoo. I must assume that's a Tauren Moonkin. If it is not, then you're doing it wrong. He's from Homerush EU. You can make as many puns or jokes as you like on that one. And he says this. Dear TotalBiscuit, I hope this message finds you well, because while I'm writing it, I'm certainly not well. Okay, that's your excuse for misspelling caliber then. Like you, I am of the opinion that WoW players need to have even a basic level of knowledge of their gaming class, but unlike you, I've been rather apprehensive about voicing such opinions in fear of being trolled on the forums by every scrub under the goddamn sun. Well, yeah, with me it was kind of the opposite. Blizzard banned me because they were afraid that I would troll every scrub under the sun. And apparently scrubs also pay money, so I am not allowed to scare them off. Right, okay, I was interested to know that. Oh well, it's a shame, but hey, there you go. Well, he's going on and saying, but the other day something rather laughable happened to me, which unfortunately for me broke the camel's back. Yes, indeed, it broke the camel's back. I was sitting in Dalaran on my Tauren Druid in flight form, taking advantage of the flying mount glitch. I whistled for a mount, and when it came near, the license plate said scrubs, and there were dice in the mirror. He didn't actually say that, by the way. That's a comical insertion, don't you know? Which is what might be said when a clown has sex. Yeah, it's a comical insertion. Hey! That was bad. Right, let's get on with it, shall we? A flying mount glitched near the wall just outside the northern bank when, lo and behold, a DK with full tier 9 walked up to me and said, "Where can I get a flying form?" Where can I get a flying form? In complete disbelief, I replied to him, "Lol, mate, you're funny." To which he asked me the question again. It was around this time that I began to cry inside, so naturally I inspected this seemingly clueless buffoon to discover no gems, no enchants, with half his non-tier gear covered in spell power. I quickly went to the forums, nearly MMO champion, to make a thread about this, voicing my opinion that Blizzard should make it so easy for absolute scrubs like this to even make it to endgame, and how no one even seemed to be bothered to pick him up on it. In quick succession to the session of outrage at not only the gaming community, but at Blizzard as well, my MMO champion account was banned due to what they deemed as flaming. So I pose to you, Mr. Biscuit, is it right that this person should be allowed to play this game while lacking the knowledge I mentioned above? And also, is it right that while trying to alert the WoW community to this ever-growing problem, I'm banned for it? Well, for one thing, I would not want to make a judgment on why MMOC actually banned you. A lot of the times they are a little bit trigger-happy, but you also didn't tell me what exactly you said. There are a lot of possibilities of things that you might have said that may have pissed them off just a little bit. And I would imagine that saying, "Oh my god, nub, 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 scrub, flame, flame, flame," probably doesn't work all that well. As much as I would like to say it's the best way to engage an audience, and it is on this show, it's extremely entertaining, but on someone else's forum, well, maybe not. Is it right that they should be allowed to play the game? Well, yeah, they pay the subscription. However, bear in mind a few things. First things first, this guy could have very well been trolling you. In the same way that we trolled people with Spirit Mourn, which got about 150,000 views and made a lot of people's eyes explode out of their faces with sheer, unadulterated nerd rage. It's very easy to troll people like that. Extremely easy, in fact. Worryingly so, one might say. And as it turns out, yes, there are people that will do that just for the sake of it. He may well have been wearing a set of trolling gear. In fact, I'm always wearing trolling gear because, of course, I'm the best race. But there are some people that do walk around in terrible gear just to see what kind of reaction they can get. It's the same reason that I ran around with Murky all the time and then directed people to go farm 10,000 Murlocs in the Swamp of Sorrows in order to get the drop. Why? Because I'm mean and unreasonable, and such people, well, they just deserve to have their time wasted in that way. Is it right they should play the game? Yeah, of course it is. If this guy was legit, of course he should be able to play the game. Here's the thing, though. He shouldn't be able to get access to the top-tier content. Like, if this was vanilla, that guy would be wearing tier 0 or tier 0.5. Most likely tier 0.5 if he could be asked, and if anyone would let him into a group to go do the bosses for it. I can't remember what his name was. Lord Velanash or something. Slash Blash. I don't know. Whatever the case. Veclanash. I don't know what it is. No, Veclanash was a... that was the Twin Emperors, wasn't it? Oh, God. Whatever the case, there was some lash or something or other, and he was actually quite hard to do. You had to summon the boss, you had to pay some money to do it, and in order to get your good piece of tier 0.5. But that's the kind of gear he would have been running around in. He wouldn't have been running around in raiding gear. That's the difference between that and, of course, everything before all of the ridiculous nerfs in TBC, whereby they were giving you tier 6 equivalent loot for running heroic ramparts, which did seem somewhat ridiculous. Although, it must be said that Heroic Ramparts is harder than pretty much every other frickin' heroic in Wrath. So, it's just how far we've fallen there. So yeah, of course he should be able to access the game. He just shouldn't be able to access the end game. When he's getting gear that is only a step or two below that which people work their asses off in order to get, one gets a delusion that they are entitled to go into the raiding content because they have the raiding gear. That is not the case, and it's also why gear score is a pretty bad way to judge whether or not someone is deserving of being in your group. It's just a shame there isn't a way to educate them, and that's actually Blizzard's fault. It's not your fault, it's not my fault, it's not the guild's fault, it is Blizzard's fault for giving them this ridiculously powerful gear for doing nothing at all. Maybe if that didn't happen and they had to work and learn about the game in order to get their gear, they wouldn't be so goddamn dumb. That would be my hopes, at any rate. As to whether or not that's the case, who knows? And then maybe, if it's not the case, I can go and throw myself off a bridge in complete and total protest. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. It's sad, isn't it? It's so very, very, very sad. I wonder if I've got a song that's appropriate to this. Maybe. I'll have to come up with it at some other time, however, because I have this urge. And this urge is to play some really good music. Some extremely good music, in fact. Something from the old era of In Flames when they didn't actually suck. Yes, that did happen. Many of you don't really remember that, and I don't blame you for not knowing. This was perhaps the final album before they started sucking, and the name of the track is Pinball Map. Enjoy. You're listening to the podcast, an archive of Blue Plz. Music was removed to comply with copyright law. If you'd like to hear the music, tune into the live stream on Fridays at 8 p.m. GMT. That's 3 p.m. EST, only on cynicalbrit.com.
Friend, I've got what you need. A premium quality Ventrilo server from UGTservers.com. It's goblin engineering, you see. Not like those inferior gnome products, always backfiring. If you're short on cash, you can even share the cost of the server with Guild Deposit. Have those lazy guildies of yours pay their dues. You know, I could offer you this amazing electric cattle prod that'll really get them moving.
UGTservers.com. Voice communication for your guild. Get yours today. Yes, indeed, folks, you're listening to Blue Plz here on cynicalbrit.com with myself, TotalBiscuit. So many requests to sing that silly, silly raiding song. Shall I do it at the end of the show? Live performance? I managed to drive away, I think, at least half of my subscribers, so maybe doing it live might drive away the other half. So, yeah, I think we could possibly arrange something along those lines. Yes. It's disturbing, isn't it? Right. Let's get on with it, shall we? What is going on in the world of Warcraft at this moment in time? Well, there have been a few changes over the past week in the beta, one of which you may have also experienced on the PTR. The PTR is up, so you can test some stuff. That doesn't mean you can test all of it. It's stuff like talent changes and things like that that are coming in the 4.0 patch notes. You can test that on the PTR right now, but the most of it, no, you can't test that, which, I suppose that kind of sucks for some people at any rate, but you're just going to have to wait. Patience is a virtue, ladies and gents. Beta and PTR are not the same thing, as much as some people would wish otherwise. Okay. So, one of the major changes is that you get experience from gathering nodes. What do I mean by gathering nodes? Well, gathering nodes are herbs and rocks. Yes, mining and herbalism. They are not skinning. They are not fishing. And they are most assuredly not archaeology, which is actually kind of disappointing, but whatever. We're going to go into whether or not this is a good idea, but first I would like to read from the Booketh of Whining, Chapter 2, verses 5 to QQ. Now, what do I mean by the Booketh of Whining? I am, of course, referring to the forums. So let us sit in silence for a moment and venerate its holy pages and the words that are said upon its hallowed ground. And Bad Dandy in the guild is a living legend on Alexstrasza, US. Him of the prophet, him of the holy word, did say, was reading up at MMO Champs today, while servers were down, and saw a blue post stating they are considering giving XP to characters as they gather from nodes. Seems to be ATM, just mining and herbs, give upward of 2.4k XP per node. Now that sounds a little bit like an Elcor. We could do it in plain song form, I guess. Having been in a guild crafter Dominus since vanilla, I find this to be completely unfair. To characters who would be unwilling to drop their Sancti Dominus Spiritus, their current professions, to gain this huge resource of bonus XP. I can't even imagine how people who are going to try for their Realm First 85s would feel about this kind of thing. I said that this should not be put into the game for any reason, and I hope many of you would feel the same way. Right. Okay. Excellent. Fantastic. I would hope this isn't put into the game for any reason, no matter how good the reason is, because I'm a closed-minded idiot. Jesus. It's so dumb. Okay, let's look at his rationale, shall we? Let's look at his rationale for a second. Right, okay, so this is one of... There are a few ways to identify a terrible argument. One, it's posted on the WoW forums, so you can assume as a default position that the argument will be terrible, because those capable of making a rational argument have long since left to go to a better forum, because it is a waste of time trying to make a rational argument on the WoW forums, because it will offend somebody, it will start a flame war, and then you'll probably get banned for pointing out just how dumb the offended person actually is. So, you can assume, as a default, until proven otherwise... Now, this is an establishment, yeah? This is an objective fact. So what you need to do in order to prove otherwise is to challenge said objective fact with actual evidence. So you can assume that this guy is an idiot, because he's posting on the WoW forums. Not only that, but he started a post on the WoW forums, and in his title, he has an exclamation that is paramount to a petition. Say no to gaining XP for gathering, and also to the rights of blacks and women. Yeah. So, the second point that you can see in this post that makes him an idiot and his argument completely invalid is the fact that the majority of his argument comes down to the fact that I've been a guild crafter and I didn't get this before, therefore nobody should get it after the fact. The third point is the lack of actual fact and complete distortion of reality that you tend to find in most of these posts on the WoW forums, because, like YouTube, the WoW forums also have a reality distortion field. Now, there are various examples of the YouTube reality distortion field, which include the translation of we to I. So, say if somebody says we think, that actually means I think. It is a little bit of a different language. It takes a long time to really learn how these idiots actually think, or whether or not they even do. I'm not sure if it could be classified as thought. I think it's more of an accident of the brain, a misfire of neurons that is blurted out onto the keyboard with no thought or consideration as to what it actually says. An accident. Yes, a foolish mistake, a mishap, as it were. But in this case, what we have is the WoW Forums reality distortion field, and the reality distortion field there is that they believe that subjective, selfish reasoning actually means a good argument. What they also think is that, say, facts like the fact that you get very little experience from actual gathering, and it is only designed to compensate you for the wasted time of wandering over to the node as opposed to farming. And by farming, I am talking about mobs and quests, of course, for experience. They actually believe that through the lens, the creepy, murky lens, the dirty window pane of the WoW Forums reality distortion field, that it is a huge resource of bonus experience. I have tried, at level 80, to mine a node of copper. Would you like to know how much experience it got me? 5. Yes, 5 experience. Now, of course, it goes up and up and up, but only when you get to the highest level are you getting 2 to 4k XP per node, if anything. Now, I'd also like you to bear in mind, of course, that the experience that you gain from mobs these days is a lot higher than that, and I have got 8 to 9k from killing a single creature in the past. So, really, this is something of a non-issue. Now, he then goes on to say, I would say that this should not be put into the game for any reason, and this is the 4th reason why this argument is garbage, because it very clearly shows that this guy is a closed-minded bigot. He has no idea what he's talking about, and will refuse, indeed, to entertain any other ideas other than his misinformed, dumbass perception of how this actually works, which is, of course, incorrect. Now, you might wonder how exactly it's possible to be so wrong when you have only used about 200 words in your terrible original post. And the answer to that is, quite simply, that these people are not of the human race. They are some kind of subtype. A subgenome, as it were. Perhaps they are descended from the, as we thought, wiped out Neanderthals. I would imagine that actually 70% of the internet has been descended from Neanderthals, considering the idiocy I read on the forums, and on anything else in general on a daily basis. But what I will say is that this guy is totally wrapped up in his own reality. And here's the actual reality of this, folks. The actual reality is that I suggested something like this back in September. I made a big post on the matter, and it was called the alternate leveling system. It was called Total. Yes, indeed. Total leveling experience. And the idea being that you could level from basically anything. And everything that you did, every piece of time that you invested in your leveling experience, whether or not it be PvP, PvE, crafting, raiding, exploration, etc., should be rewarded. And as it turns out, that is what they have done. And this is the latest implementation of that idea. Now, I'm not arrogant enough to say, yes, I'm actually saying that. I am not arrogant enough to say, I'm arrogant enough to say basically anything. But what I will not do is fall prey to the same ideas that are infecting the WoW population, in that I believe that Blizzard actually gives a damn about what I have to say, and that my opinion is somehow more golden than others. Now, all opinions are pretty much terrible. Blizzard knows this, and they are smart enough to come up with ideas on their own. It just happens that a good idea may also be thought of by Blizzard and may be implemented in their own way. So, in this total leveling experience post, which you can read if you so desire, I'll put a link in the show notes for you, or you can just go find it. It's one of my old blog posts from back in September last year. And what I said was, everything should be rewarded. So, if people like to explore, they should be rewarded with experience for that. If people like to PvP, they should be rewarded with experience for that as well. And as it turns out, a lot of these have been implemented. 1, experience for PvP. That has been implemented. That was implemented a couple of months after I put that blog post out. And now we also have experience for exploration. It's been boosted It's actually better than it used to be, which is very good indeed. And we now have experience for gathering professions, which is not too bad at all. Now, what is Blizzard's rationale? Well, they explained this very clearly and very accurately. Gathering professions slow down leveling, and they are as such unattractive. What they want is for people to level their gathering professions while leveling, as opposed to hit top level, then go back and power grind all of it. Now, there are a number of reasons why this is a good idea. For instance, in Cataclysm, think about how infuriating it would be as a low level, who, say, only has a standard speed mount, to have a guy on a 310% speed flying mount swoop down and steal your copper node because he decided he wanted to re-level something else today because it's flavor of the month. That's bollocks. So what you want to do is to try and discourage that. It's about encouraging people to level their gathering professions as they level up and take nodes that are appropriate to their level. So one would hope that you get a little bit less competition with the power levelers at level 85 just grinding all the way up there. What else? Well, again, they want to compensate for the point that a lot of people don't take gathering professions early on because they are a waste of time, often. You're talking about having to run away from your predefined path, as it were. You often have to go out of your way to actually find what you need, particularly in very busy areas. If you're going to do that, and if you're going to slow down your leveling, then you should be compensated for that. And that's exactly what they're doing right here. Now, some people might ask, well, TotalBiscuit, why have they not done it with skinning? Well, I can give you a reason, because that would actually be the most overpowered, power leveling, ridiculous thing ever. Because you can skin most things, as opposed, you can't skin humans, but you can skin pretty much any type of beast and things like that. So you can skin an awful lot of mobs that you're going to be fighting. So what that means is you kill the mob, then you skin the mob, and suddenly you've got extra experience for doing nothing. And that's a couple of seconds as opposed to maybe 20 to 30 seconds running out of the way to get a node, and then running back to where you were supposed to be in the first place for killing your mobs. And that kind of sucks. So yeah, they shouldn't put that in. However, there is also the concept of leveling from secondary professions, and I wanted them to go a lot further. What I want them to do is to allow secondary professions to give you experience as well. I'm talking about gathering professions for that. If I spend time fishing, should I be getting experience for that? Yes. Should I be getting enough experience to get to level 85 entirely from fishing? No. And that's also the reason you can't get to level 85 entirely from mining or skinning or herbalism or whatever the hell else they want to tack experience onto. There are only two ways to really properly level in this game. One is PvE, the other is PvP. And that is entirely reasonable. Why is that entirely reasonable, you might ask? Well, it's entirely reasonable because you're talking about leveling from something that's going to train you for what you're doing at maximum level. So if you're a PvPer and you level entirely via PvP, it is totally cool for you to go do PvP. As to whether or not you should then go do PvE, well, that's a different matter entirely, but that's also up to the groups who are inviting you to begin with. And I'm sure you'll learn very quickly that people don't like it when people don't do their jobs properly. The same reason why people get frustrated in Battlegrounds when a bunch of PvEers that don't even understand the very principles of it go in there just to farm badges because they're very, very lazy or whatever. As it turns out, there will be some badges available from PvP in Cataclysm. Or at least their equivalent of badges at any rate. What about fishing, though? Well, yeah, that should get it. What about something like cooking? Well, here's the thing. Here's the divide. This is why getting experience from crafting is not necessarily a good thing. Because what you're basically doing there is buying experience. That's a terrible idea, because that encourages gold selling to ridiculous levels. You should not be able to buy experience points. So if I were to gain experience from making items, then that would kind of suck. As far as I'm concerned, if you're going to do that, you'd have to track it. You'd have to make sure that you gathered all of those things yourself, as opposed to bought them from the AH or anybody else. It would be like having BOP drops, only it would be a invisible tag. But stuff like Archaeology, that's very time-consuming, and you absolutely should be getting leveling from that. Now, I'm probably going to stick with what I've always done, which is enchanting and something, whatever is beneficial at the time. I've got enchanting and jewel crafting right now, and I'll probably stick with that. It's a fairly high level, I've got good recipes, so why would I not stick with that? That would just be silly. I don't believe I should be getting experience from that. But I'm totally fine with people gaining experience from gathering. I mean, why wouldn't you be? The argument against this is this guy. That's the argument. It's crap. That's the best they can come up with. Honestly. And Blizzard's response to us is fairly suitable. The conversation taking place here is making me sad. That was the Blizzard response. They think you are dumb. and you are. You are so very, very dumb. So yes, gathering experience, bring it on, please. And let's have more implementation. Go back to my blog post, please, Blizzard, and go and at least have a look and just see what is so wrong with giving people experience for doing what they like doing. As long as they've got to put effort into it, and as long as it is actually helping them learn to be a better player, why the hell not? My name is TotalBiscuit, and you are listening to Blue Plz here on cynicalbrit.com. Sonata Arctica is probably one of the most popular bands we put on the stream, and I'm going to play some for you because it's awesome. Massive fan, as are a lot of people that listen. You're listening to the podcast, an archive of Blue Plz. Music was removed to comply with copyright law. If you'd like to hear the music, tune into the live stream on Fridays at 8 p.m. GMT. That's 3 p.m. EST, only on cynicalbrit.com. You are listening to Blue Plz here on cynicalbrit.com with myself, TotalBiscuit, and it would appear that we're going to need to get the pound out in the freaking cam chat right now. We have animals all over the place. That is one kick-ass dog. Just look at that beautiful motherfucking dog. Yes. That is an awesome dog. I actually have a cat over here. Probably not all that interested in coming to say hello, but you never know, it might. Here, cat. Come entertain the public. Aha! Yes, there we go. Ha! Excellent. We have a cat, we shall cast with the cat. I'm going to put the cat on the shoulder. There we go. Ha! Right. No. It's not fun, honestly. Never mind. It used to do a parrot act, but it doesn't really anymore. I think it's become a little bit depressing, or depressed, or depressive in its old age. Whatever. Right, okay. Let us talk about something else. Unbelievable. Shows have multiple topics now. It's a wonderful, crazy world of technology we live in. What I will say regarding topics, that you can email in for the Cataclysm Q&A at the end of the show. Yes, email in themurloc at cynicalbrit.com or themurloc at gmail.com, whichever you prefer. Both are good, both work. Get your questions in for the Cataclysm Q&A at the end of the show, and answer whatever you have, or try to, as long as it's Cataclysm related. Yes. Guild leveling. Let's talk about that, shall we? Why not? So, Blizzard made a rather shock announcement that I was not aware of, and a lot of other people weren't either. It's a very small little post. It's in regards to leveling speed, the guild leveling speed. A lot of different things. And here's what they said. Before I go on to that, actually, I'll say a little bit about what they are talking about here, which is what is actually gaining you experience at the moment in the beta and what is not. And by experience, I'm talking about guild experience. A lot of people have been very confused about guild experience as well as guild rep. So, here is what is apparently currently giving experience. There are some stuff that's not active yet. Like rated battlegrounds is not active yet. And also, a lot of dungeons are not giving guild experience right now. But all dungeons going back to Classic will gain guild experience. Guild experience gained from bosses is based on the boss's level and is modified by things like the number of players in your party or raid, and if the encounter is heroic or not. Which means that if you're going back and farming, say, Ragefire Chasm as a level 85, you're not going to be earning all that much guild experience. It's not currently working for rated battlegrounds because they're not in the beta yet, but it will earn it from rated battlegrounds. And it's currently not being given out for achievements. Apparently that's being implemented very soon, and guild achievements will give a large amount of experience, and for this reason apparently they do not respect the daily cap. So if you use your achievements correctly, you can actually exceed the daily experience cap for your guild. Interesting. You gain experience for questing, as you might imagine. And apparently, as far as reputation gain goes, this is according to Blizzard, you need to remember that rep gain is based on your guild XP contribution. As you can see from my notes above, you currently only have, at the moment in the beta, one way to contribute, which is questing. But you're going to be able to contribute in a wide variety of different ways. They are not specific as to whether or not you can contribute via crafting and things like that. I would think so. That's what they claimed initially back at BlizzCon 2009. I don't know if they've kept that in. I hope that they have. Okay. Now that's good, But what is not good is the last post in this. This is by a blue poster called Mumper, which I've never heard of before, but hey, there you go. Shout out to Mumper. There is no concept of top 20 contributors anymore. We changed that functionality many months ago, and experience contributed to the guild comes from all members. Guild rep is always available no matter how much you have contributed to the guild. Oh, that's bad. That is not good at all, is it? Here's the thing. That encourages zerg-guilding. Lots of zerg-guilding. Massive, great, stonking, huge zerg-guilds. The problem with that is that you can get not a huge amount, but you can get some competitive edge by being in a stonking, great, huge guild. Now, a lot of the really competitive guilds are quite small. They're not all that large because it's much easier to organize big, crazy raiding when you have the right number of members available at any given time, as opposed to having to pick from 500 members. Now, the problem with this is, well, the main problem, as far as I'm concerned with this, is not guild reputation, because that doesn't really matter. You gain that individually. It's guild experience and guild perks. So, if you remember what the guild perks had, I can probably bring that up for you, tell you exactly what it is. Here it is. So, there are a number of things that are very useful to raiders, and could in fact accelerate the rate at which you gain both gear and raid progression. So if we have a look through it, fast track doesn't matter, mount up doesn't matter, Mr. Popularity potentially could matter because there could be some stuff at exalted rep. So Mr. Popularity could help in a raid environment. Cash flow doesn't really matter. Fast track again doesn't matter. Reinforce is kind of nice, but it's not a major deal. And you get 10% less durability loss when you die. That means you basically get one more wipe before you have to fix it. But considering the number of things that you have to do anyway, in order to, you've got loads of different ways to fix your stuff now, so it's irrelevant. Chug-a-lug, that's kind of useful. That's the duration of all buffs from guild cauldrons and feasts increased by 50%. It's useful for raiding. It's not ideal, but it is useful. Mobile banking, nobody cares. Honorable mention, nobody cares. Working overtime, nobody cares. Quicken the dead is handy. And that, along with mass resurrection at the end, actually speeds up the time it takes to recover from a wipe. It increases the health and mana gained when resurrected by a guild member by 50%, increases movement speed while dead by 100%. So it makes running back very quick, and it also makes rezzing up and getting ready for a fight again very quick, so you can save time. But here are the big, big things. So you can, everyone's a hero. Rank 1 and 2 actually increase your heroism points gained by 5 or 10%. Now, of course, heroism is not the same as conquest. So it's not like you're going to be getting uber gear really, really quickly. But it will help a little bit in terms of plugging gaps. So, the fact that there even exists such a blatant advantage to being in a zerg guild, and by zerg guild, what do I mean? I just mean a large guild that just invites loads and loads of people to it. You don't really have to do anything. That's the problem. You don't have to be good at the game in order to contribute guild experience. Guild experience is contributed by doing very, very simple tasks. And it boosts your level up quite significantly. Now, the way that this is going to work, if at all, is if they balance the cap correctly. So there is a cap on how much you can get, but that cap can be broken by guild achievements. Yeah? The question is, how much XP do those guild achievements actually give you? It's difficult to tell because right now, of course, the beta is not properly balanced and it's not finalized. But if you're gaining large chunks of guild experience from, say, the Critter quest, then one has to wonder what Blizzard is really thinking about there. I'm hoping they will restrict the experience boosts to things that actually matter. Like, say, the Glory of the Cataclysm Raider achievement, or some of the really good PvP achievements. I would expect that to give a lot of experience. I would not expect the Cataclysm, or the Critter Course, as I like to call it, to give you any freaking XP at all. Because that's just dumb. Why would you receive rewards for doing something so silly? And it gains you actual advantages in raiding. Thankfully, they're not massive, but they do help. Stuff like Half Group Will Travel. Summons all raider party members to the caster's current location. 2-hour cooldown on that, but it's still kind of helpful. Chug-a-lug rank 2. Things like that, that's very helpful. Happy Hour. Hell, even bountiful bags when you think about it. If you're trying to mine and if there are rare materials and things within raid dungeons, bountiful bags increases the quantity of materials gained for mining, skinning, herbalism, and disenchanting by 15%. One assumes if there is craftable gear that is desirable for raiding, as there has been through every expansion, then, again, that's an advantage. So it's balancing the cap, really. Now, this is not the only problem I've really got with the fact that they've taken out the top 20 contributors thing. I thought the top 20 contributors was entirely reasonable. It's like, it doesn't matter how big your guild is, as long as you have like 10 or 20 active people, then you're good to go. But it's an awkward balance, isn't it, when you think about it? Because this is a potential situation where Blizzard is damned if they do and damned if they don't. So, let's just say, for instance, we're going for top 10 contributors. Yeah? Top 10 contributors. Gives an advantage, or does it? Does it give an advantage to people that only have a small guild? Not necessarily. Because those people are still going to have to be doing their best in order to contribute. For instance, in a larger guild, if you have, say, 50 members, then it takes the 10 best, or the 20 best. And that's a very good thing. Why is that a very good thing, you might ask? Well, the answer should be fairly obvious. It's the same reason why, say, America is very good at international sporting events. Because they have a lot of people, and they have a culture of sports. So, what you do is you can take the best from a larger pool of people, as opposed to, say, Liechtenstein, that doesn't have all that many in comparison. It's the simple law of averages. If you've got more people, you're likely to have more people that are also above average and awesome. Whereas in a 10 to 12 person guild, not so much. Now, that's not to say a 10 to 12 person guild couldn't keep up under those rules. Absolutely, they could. No doubt about that. But that doesn't mean they're any good at it. Which I think is a little bit more important. It's not necessarily the case that they're going to be as good as a 50 or 60 person guild. And one might say that discourages larger guilds. Well, I think there are a lot of things that already discourage larger guilds. The organization factor being a very significant one of those. And think about it for a second. Organizing a large guild and maintaining a large guild and doing the whole logistical thing and the management thing is really hard. It's actually really challenging. It's tricky. It's difficult. That's a bit of a problem, isn't it, when you think about it? I've managed large guilds before, and as it turns out, it looks like I'm managing a large guild again, because, yes, the Troll Guild, trollface.jpg, will be a large guild, because I'm not going to restrict who can join it. But I will be, 1, kicking out idiots, and 2, restricting the people that get to raid with me. People are going to have to accept that. And yeah, it probably will be a 500-person Troll Guild. And yeah, there's going to be organization problems there, and I'm going to have to make sure that that's all sorted out, but I mean, it's a big headache, and honestly, I'll be getting people to help me manage that, but most people don't want to handle that kind of nonsense. Why would they? Why would they want to handle the nonsense of organizing a 500-person guild? Think about that for a second. It's silly. In this case, I really don't agree with Blizzard's view on this at all. Their idea, I also don't agree with the fact that they snuck it out of there. It's like they ran out the back door with it. God, it's like Blizzard stole a goddamn television. Pretty horrendous when you think about it. They snuck out the back door with the 20-person top 20 limit and didn't tell anybody until, like, now, which is, supposedly we are, what, a month and a half from release, if BB's estimation is correct, which it may very well be. So now it's a little bit too late, maybe, to say to them, "Oi, Blizzard, now? What's going on with this? What are you doing?" That's silly, isn't it? I don't know what you think about that. It's difficult. It is tricky. You know, I'm going to put a poll up, because I feel like it. Something that... Well, let me do a quick poll. Okay, let's see. It was like a quick Twitter poll thing, wasn't there? I'll put up a poll over the course of the break. I like to see what you guys actually think about this. A quick sample of the community, and I'll also let people that listen to the podcast vote. I want to know if you think whether or not the 10 or 20-person top 20 limit is actually valid. Should it be in the game, or should Blizzard have actually taken it out? It's tricky. It's such a difficult subject. Because you really can't go one way or the other without favouring one thing over another. I mean, people are already saying that 25-man is dead, which is nonsense, I might add, because you do get more stuff in a 25-man guild. 25-man guilds are still the optimum way to raid. But do you want to raid in a 25-man guild? Because there used to be a deterrent to raiding in a 10-man guild. But the thing is, I said this before. If 25-man raiding can't survive on the basis solely of it being 25-man raiding, and the enjoyment factor given by 25-man raiding, then 25-man raiding is a dead format and should be destroyed. It should be gotten rid of, because it's not what people want to do. And if it is what people want to do, then why should we have to reward people for that? It's the same, it's a silly argument, but I suppose it then comes down to this. This change sort of sways people in the direction of one guild or another, and I have to wonder just how powerful a influence this is going to be. Whether or not people are going to group up in zerg guilds, and whether or not large guilds of people doing very little at all should gain access to things before, say, slimline, mean, lean, skilled raiding guilds. Well, I'm hoping that the guild cap will make sure that doesn't happen. That's all I can say. Hopefully they get the cap right, and then I suppose it'll be alright. We shall see. My name is TotalBiscuit, so I'm told. And you're listening to the one and only Blue Plz here on cynicalbrit.com. Ah, the wonders of music. What shall we play? So many good tracks on my list right now. I've got like a 12,000 track playlist at the moment. There are so many choices. I was thinking of playing some older Scar Symmetry because I like the new stuff, don't get me wrong, but at the end of the day, they had to replace their lead singer with two singers just to get the range that he had. That's how badass the original singer for Scar Symmetry actually was. So why don't I remind you of just how badass he was? And I'm going to play you something from the Pitch Black Progress album, and it's called Mind Machine. Enjoy. You're listening to the podcast, an archive of Blue Plz. Music was removed to comply with copyright law. If you'd like to hear the music, tune into the live stream on Fridays at 8 p.m. GMT. That's 3 p.m. EST, only on cynicalbrit.com. You're listening to Blue Plz here on cynicalbrit.com with myself, TotalBiscuit. Okay, what else do we have for you? Things. Cats on my bloody PS3! Get off! Get off the PS3. I will throw things at you. Seriously. I've got this... What have I got to throw out? I don't like these strawberry mowums, so... actually, this cherry? I don't know. Get off that bloody computer thing! Thank you. Goddamn animals. Right, okay, let's go on, shall we? We have one other topic I would like to discuss, and that is archaeology in general. Archaeology... Oh, weird, isn't it? It's very odd. A very unusual profession. One would expect that it would be a rather unusual profession. It certainly should be, after the 5 or 6 years of non-professions that we've had. And by non-professions, of course, I don't mean they haven't done any. I'm talking about the fact that, honestly, they've really not done enough with them. You would think that after the initial professions, they would learn that maybe professions should be a little bit more interesting. There are a wide variety of games that do professions an awful lot better than Blizzard does, honestly. And for God's sake, I'm talking about freaking Vanguard does crafting better than they do. Pretty bad, man. Think about it. Vanguard's awful, and yet Vanguard has better crafting. I think that EverQuest has better crafting, Lotro has better crafting, DDO has better crafting. Frickin' Eve has better crafting, man. Everything has better crafting than WoW. Crafting has been one of the low points of the game. I always like to say that WoW is competent at everything, and which is why it's such a success, because it's a all-in-one package. It is. It's a package of various features and elements that work pretty well together, and none of them are bad, per se, with the exception of Wrath Heroics. So, what exactly is wrong with crafting? Well, for the longest time, crafting has been so very, very boring. Oh, man. You know, I've always liked the idea of creating things. I've been a big fan of it ever since I got into gaming. I liked games that allow me to create. So we're talking about things like, say, SimCity is probably one of the first games. Let me think back. Was it SimCity? No, there was one before that. There was one before that. I can't even remember the name. It was on the BBC Micro. I was about 4 years old. And it was it wasn't Twin Kingdom Valley. That was a adventure game. There was something else, like Yellow something, I can't remember, whatever the case. It was a game that allowed you to manage a village and try to, like, grow crops and stuff like that, and you create little houses and stuff, and you'd reinforce the dam to make sure it didn't blow and kill everybody. And compared to all of the other stuff, the things that were on the BBC Micro at the time, and indeed any other computer format, we're looking at stuff, you know, bear in mind this was 1987. We're talking about fairly basic shooters, some adventure games, a couple of basic racing games, things like that, but there's mostly shooters. A couple of platformers here and there. Actual games that allowed you to create something were fairly rare. And then, of course, SimCity came out, and it just kept going and going and going, and I've always had this attraction to games that allow me to create things. I think one of the games that I've sunk an awful lot of time into, and will no doubt continue to do so because it is fantastic, is the one and only X3. X3 is part of the X series by Egosoft, and it is a space-based exploration and management game. It's, you get a ship and some money, you go own the frickin' universe. It'll take you ages to do it, but you can do it. I can create my own complexes, my own ships, my own fleets. Oh, man, that really, really makes me excited. I like to create things. I like to have my... It's the megalomaniac in me, and indeed Megalomania is a prime example of one of those games that allowed you to create stuff. But when it comes to WoW, the creativity is non-existent. You don't create anything. You're a production line. That's the biggest problem I've got with it. You are some glorified factory. A walking, talking, questing, grinding, flaming, QQing, crying, whining factory. And it's just so disappointing. And indeed, why wouldn't it be? How is that a good thing? Someone please explain how that is a good thing. It's not. So is not. And it's embarrassed me, really, to say that I play WoW whenever I talk about crafting. Because someone will just turn around and say, well, what do you know about crafting? You play World of Warcraft, it's got a terrible crafting system. And you're bloody right! You are absolutely 100% correct in that assumption. It does have a really bad crafting system. Because there's nothing to it. Get mats, make thing. Thing is always same as other thing. It's a printing press. It's a good comparison, really, isn't it? The printing press is very useful, but it's quite dull in comparison to, say, illuminated manuscript. If you don't know what that is, then you're... Oh, God. Seriously, go Google it. Get some damn culture into you. Illuminated manuscripts, ladies and gentlemen. Each one is slightly different. It's an art to create an illuminated manuscript. It takes a long time. You are creating something. You are crafting something. A printing press doesn't craft anything. It just makes copies. It's a freaking photocopier. That's what you are. You are walking, talking, whining, QQing, flaming, screaming photocopier when you make things in WoW with a crafting system. Occasionally you will discover new recipes, which are the same as recipes that other people have. You will create the same kind of item every single time, with rare exceptions. And even in those rare exceptions, you will create a variety of stuff. Like, say, you can create some rings that might be slightly different in terms of stats. A random enchantment on them. But it's very rare. You don't really get any input into it either. Like, for instance, I think there are a number of games, both single-player, multiplayer, and massively multiplayer, that allow you to modify an existing recipe with something rare or unique, so you can power up a particular item using that. That doesn't exist. The nearest that we've ever gotten to that, I think, is the... If you remember the Lionheart Blade. Oh, yes, I remember the Lionheart Blade. When was that? When did that happen? Was that TBC? Oh, God, it's so long ago. I'll have to check that out. I'm going to Google that right now. The Lionheart Blade. It's an item in... Yes, item level 107. That was TBC. The Lionheart Blade could be upgraded twice. And also the Storm Herald and things like that. That could be upgraded to Lionheart Executioner, I believe was the best version. And one of its components was the Lionheart Champion and 5 Nether Vortexes. And before that, of course, you could take the Lionheart Blade and apply 8 Primal Nethers and 2 Primal Might. That was about as close as they got to upgrading your gear that way. So sad, is it not? So very sad. Now, I think the reason that Archaeology is a step forward is because it's something different. They haven't advanced gathering professions since vanilla, really. The only major change I can think of in terms of gathering professions, in fact, is the fishing schools. You remember the fishing schools? I'm sure you do. Think about it. What major changes have there been to mining? Yeah, exactly. What major changes have there been to herbalism? Yeah, thought so. Nothing. In 6 years, they have not advanced it one bit. They've not made it any more interesting, and you know what? At the time, the gathering professions were perfectly fine. But it's 6 years down the road, and Blizzard has not kept up with the curve. And you know why? Because they haven't really had any competition, which is pretty sad, isn't it? They'd had some legitimate competition besides, say, Eve and maybe Lotro. Bear in mind, Lotro has a better crafting system, but not by much. And Eve's just so different, you can't apply that principle to WoW anyway. They just haven't had any competition that has urged them forward and pushed them in order to make a better crafting system and a better gathering system in any way, shape, or form. And incidentally, I might add things like, oh, it gives you a buff. Yeah, that's a massive change. I can see them picking it up at this very moment to get those buffs. No. And the fact that you can now mine in one hit instead of 3. That's not a major change. That's convenience. That should have been in there to begin with. That's not a major change to the way gathering works. What you should be doing is you should be taking the principle of gathering and making it better. Making it more advanced. Making it more enjoyable to do. And it's just not happening. However, with Cataclysm, they have finally gotten around to advancing the gathering profession somehow with this secondary skill Archaeology. A lot of you have probably watched the video. You're probably aware of what Archaeology does. I certainly hope not. If not, let me give you a brief overview. Archaeology involves you going to various dig sites. There are always 4 dig sites on every single continent if you are level appropriate. That means if you are level 20, which is the basic starting level, you will have dig sites on 2 continents. You will not have dig sites in Outland, and you will not have dig sites in Northrend. And your dig sites will also be appropriate to the level you are. So you're not going to be given a Twilight Highlands dig site if you are level 27. That would be kind of silly. So you have 4 dig sites at any given time, and they rotate. Those dig sites are yours. There may be other people in the dig site, but they cannot affect how much you can gather from said dig site. It is not the same as mining a node. You go to the dig site, and you click the surveying tool. Once you click the surveying tool, a little telescope and a light will pop up. The telescope will point in the direction of where the item is, and the light will tell you how far away you are. So, what can you do? Well, you can triangulate your position and things like that, and that's probably a good idea, or you can just follow it around if you so desire. You'll get the hang of it very quickly, and you will unearth an artifact. Those artifacts are a currency. They do not fill your bag slots. So you get shards of a particular race, yeah? And there are currently, I think, 10, was it 10? I can't recall. And they're going to be adding more races available to research. Now, I researched a lot of trolls because they're, of course, the best race. I went to troll dig sites. They were in troll areas, so of course I got troll artifacts. I got the shards, I got enough shards, and I made a grey that was basically useless but gave me a little bit of lore and could sell. Of course, that was very low level. Now, I've had some guys in my guild that have now created epic items out of this. Yes, I did just say epic items. Would you like to know what? Well, I can probably give it to you. What is it? Tyrande... Let's see. I should be able to Google this fairly easily. It's called Tyranda's Favorite Doll. This is an item. It's an epic. It's an item level 359. And it comes from Archaeology. It is a trinket. The flavor text is, Tyrande is the high priestess of Elune and the leader of the Sentinels. She grew up in the ancient city of Suramar near the Well of Eternity, along with the brothers Malfurion and Illidan's Storm Rage. Tyrande's idyllic childhood proved in sharp contrast for the sorrow and conflict that she would have to endure in a later life. Blah, 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 lore. The trinket is level 85, item level 359. It improves haste rating by 321. And your healing spells grant Inner Eye, increasing spirit by 103 for 15 seconds, and it stacks up to 5 times. Yes, it does. Nice, isn't it? That is from Archaeology. So it's not just armor and weapons, you can get trinkets as well. It's pretty nice, isn't it? It is, what one might say, delicious. But this profession is just so much more interesting than anything else. It is the most interesting way to create new items. And that highlights 2 things. Firstly, Blizzard did good with Archaeology. People might watch my video and think it's highly repetitive, but there's a, not so much an addictive, but a compelling property to that particular profession. It allows you to do things that are kind of neat. It's pretty fun running around finding artifacts and being a digger, an archaeologist, whatever, finding stuff and seeing what you create next and getting the little tastes of lore. It's just so much more interesting than making items with tailoring. Great. Awesome. I have this. And what's the lore behind this blue item that you just made? Well, there isn't one, because I just collected a bunch of cloth of the AH. It's a profession you actually have to invest time in, and I think you feel more rewarded that way. You feel maybe a bigger attachment to the items that you created because you actually dug them up. You created them, even though there are so many. It's like, this is my artifact. There are many like it, but this one's mine. And a little bit of lore attached to it. It's just so much more interesting. Even the UI is better than the standard crafting UI. And the second thing it highlights is just how far behind Blizzard is with crafting right now. And with gathering. They have to do more with it. The experience is going to help. But I just think they've got to vary things up and make things way more interesting than they are now. And right now, they just aren't. They just aren't. They're not interesting. I would love to say that I was really intrigued by crafting in some way or gathering, but I can't say that because that would be a lie. Please do something about that. Please make it more interesting. Please engage someone beyond looking at a list and saying, this is what I'm going to print today. This is what I'm going to photocopy today. I am not a goddamn production line. My name is TotalBiscuit. You're listening to Blue Plz here on CynicalBrit.com. This song describes how I feel when I do a lot of crafting. It's called Mechanical Man. Enjoy. am, in fact, a mechanical man, good sir. One might say a mechanical chap. A machine-like gentleman. Yes, indeed, folks. It's Cataclysm Q&A time. Send it in to the Murloc at cynicalbrit.com. That is the Murloc at cynicalbrit.com or the Murloc at gmail.com, whichever you prefer. Also, short questions can be taken via the IRC chat only. I do not take them in Tiny Chat because the spam is impossible to deal with. Or via Twitter, whichever you prefer. So we shall kick it off right here with the usual end to the show. You know, it's going to be very, very sad when Cataclysm finally releases because I'm going to have to go back to a topic, you know, and it's a section that actually requires work on my part. So bad. So very, very bad. Oh, okay. Okay, what do we have? Spam, 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 spam. Dear host of shows.
You dare look upon the host of souls! I shall devour you all!
Did I overdo that a little? I'm thinking so. Hey there, TBM, played WoW since vanilla. Personally, pre-TBC was the most fun I had in WoW. In your videos and podcasts, I've noticed that in some respect, you've gotten back into some aspects of vanilla WoW mechanics such as crowd control, which has gotten me excited even more for the game. Now, the question is, what would you think would be a nice addition for Blizzard to include? Now, I assume that you mean from vanilla. Well, progression would be nice. And bear in mind that the best time I had in WoW was actually in TBC. I thought TBC got it right. TBC had at least 2 proper instances per tier, which is very, very important to me. I think that's the best way to do things, which means you get variety. The instances weren't necessarily too long. There were just more of them, which is totally fine as well. Some days you just don't want to raid for 5 hours. It's like, okay, we'll just go do Tempest Keep. Okay, or we'll do Hyjal, which, when experienced, it can do in about an hour and a half. Even less than that, maybe. And they're going back to that already, so that's good. What is... I mean, honestly, they're including most of the things that I liked from vanilla in that. And a lot of the things that I liked from TBC in there. And they're skipping stuff like attunements, which I think are personally garbage. So, really, I don't think there's a lot that they could add to it. Bear in mind that the game has advanced, and a lot of this stuff you really can't do anymore. It's just not acceptable. What was okay back then, as in doing Molten Core trash, is not okay now. Hell, Chthon trash is not okay now. It's just too much of it. It's okay to have hard trash, but it's not okay to waste people's time with unnecessary amounts of trash. I can't think of anything off the top of my head. Honestly, I'm totally stumped on that, so I'll have to come back to you. It should be a testament, by the way, to how good they're doing so far with Cataclysm and why it is lining up to be the best expansion yet, that I can't come up with anything from vanilla that I would want to add. It's as simple as that. It's good stuff, isn't it? Okay, what else are we going? Has Uldum been populated yet? Yes, it has. Although, some people are saying it's a little bit empty, which I would actually agree with. It is a little empty. Just a little. Where is Tinkertown? I cannot tell you. It is a secret location. Dear TB, what is your favourite WoW raid boss from vanilla until now? Oh. Chthon. Without a shadow of a doubt, it's Chthon. Chthon is badass. Such a good fight. To me, Chthon is where WoW raiding really hit its maturity. And unfortunately, of course, it did go on to some degree into TBC, and they did very well there. There's a bunch of really cool bosses there. But then Wrath sort of lost the plot, really. Chthon was just such an epic fight. And it took us so long to actually beat it, that when we finally beat it, it was so goddamn rewarding. Oh, yeah. What are the changes to priests for Cataclysm? I have no idea. All I know is there's some kind of system called Chakra, which you might want to have a look at. I don't even know how to spell it. There we go. Talent preview, Chakra. Yeah, there's so many things with classes that I don't really understand. And yeah, I am having other people on the show at some point in the not-too-distant future to talk about these kind of things. But yeah, chakra, you enter a chakra state when you use Prayer of Healing, Renew, or Heal 3 times in a row, and you can it boosts certain heals. So like your chakra, or chakra, whichever you prefer. Like Smite increases your total damage done by 4, 8, or 12% if you've got a particular nice bit of chakra and stuff like that. Yeah, there's lots of different mechanics in there, but personally, I would ask someone who actually knows what they're talking about when it comes to priests. Q&A on mechanics. Going from Samuel Parcell, and he says, just how far do you think the mechanics should go in raid encounters in Cataclysm? Like, don't stand in me mechanics, or say, like, you must do this at a certain time, or should it dive deeper, like little hints about quest lines or around the dungeon which lead to the boss's weakness? And should professions be incorporated into raids and things, like, say, all healing increased by 370... What is that? I don't even know what that is, but I will certainly talk about the concept of raid mechanics. How far should they go? Well, honestly, I don't think they should pop up and say, something is happening, move. But here's the thing. Add-ons already do that. And nobody in their right mind is going to choose not to use an add-on that already does that. So why not just put it into the game anyway? That's the argument. It's the same with stuff like threat meters. For the longest time, threat meters didn't exist, and it was important to manage your aggro and know how much damage you were doing. But then threat meters came in, and then Blizzard had to respond to that by putting in their own threat meters, because otherwise, it's just, you're going to use it anyway. You know you're going to use it anyway, so why not just put it into the game UI? I would love, honestly, I think the idea of hinting quest lines to get bosses' weaknesses, that's awesome. It's a really cool idea. And actually, I think that could be a very neat way of doing things, because some people don't want to watch boss tutorial videos, and they would like to discover it for themselves, but I think that would really help. And also, some people don't know that boss tutorial videos exist, and I think questing might be a way, particularly for more casual players, to learn a bit about the encounter before they go in, and not have to go outside the game to learn. This is something I've said for the longest time. It would be great, but very impractical if everything you ever needed to learn how to play WoW was within WoW itself. It can't happen, but I think effort should be made to have quite a lot of cool stuff within the game that does actually teach people. Hi, TotalBiscuit. When will the Cynical Brit poster be sold? No idea at some point. The canvas thing that I had on webcam before it fell off my background is a prototype, and we're looking to maybe roll out some of those in the not-too-distant future. I don't think we're going to be selling them for profit, honestly. They're just going to be for cost. Either that, I'm going to sell them and I'll donate the profits to charity one way or the other. So, whichever people want more. I might actually put up a 2-tier pricing structure. You can buy one a little bit more expensive, it'll go to charity, or you can buy one at cost price. Something like that. Do you find it amusing when Blood Elves use two-handers? I always find it amusing when Blood Elves attempt to do anything. It's like they should snap when they're wielding those things. Do you think that instances should have more traps like the Frogger boss and the Smoke After Sourfang? Yeah, absolutely they should. The Frogger boss, sadly, is the hardest boss in Naxxramas 25, man, and that should speak volumes as to how terrible raiding got in Wrath. Yeah, damn right there should be more traps, and it should also make it more useful for rogues to go and look for them. I remember when we ran into traps in ICC, and I was like, great, welcome back, traps. Awesome. We haven't seen those in ages. I mean, when was the last time you actually saw a trap in raiding before that? God. Although you all hate me for saying this, I'm a troll, you have a lot of grammatical errors in your videos. Can you please explain this? Where? Where exactly do the grammatical errors occur? I can't identify them if you're not going to tell me. Actually, all humans that are... Yes, okay, fact check OMG. Nobody cares, it was a joke. Get over it, you Spurge Lord. Hey, TB, I was wondering how many people you think are going to rejoin the game when Cataclysm drops, and if Blizzard is considering merging some low-pult realms. No, they haven't done this, and they probably won't do it. They hate it. Merging realms is like an admission of defeat. That's why Blizzard won't do it. They've actually done a reasonably good job, mostly, of balancing realms. Mostly. There are some very glaring exceptions, but if you look at it, the majority of realms work fairly well. The minority needs some work. I think that with they're going to use Cataclysm as a way to balance those realms and cause a great influx of people to come back. They'll probably offer some free moves, maybe some incentives for people to move on to different realms. And yeah, I think a lot of people will come back to Cataclysm, if only to see what's happened to the stuff they used to do. They might buy Cataclysm and resub for a month. I think this is going to have the biggest influx of people returning than any other expansion. By far. Hey, TB, I thought there was going to be a new neutral port to the east of Arathi Highlands. Do you know anything about it? No. Not a clue. I don't know anything about that whatsoever. Maybe there is one, but I haven't seen it. The only neutral port that I can think of... Actually, I can't think of one. Yeah, even the Gadget Sand port isn't technically all that neutral. I don't think. Actually, I suppose it might be. Yeah, I think there's one in Gadget Sand that's a neutral port, but most of them are either Alliance or Horde. Okay. Does listening to Addicted to Epics about 3 times before your podcast make me a nerd? Well, it makes you someone that's got way too much time in your hands. I can tell you that for a fact. Hey, TB, I thought the Cataclysm... I heard that in Cataclysm there will no longer be sub-professions and everything within the profession will be available. Is that planned? As far as I'm aware, yeah, there won't be any sub-professions as far as I know. I haven't seen them, certainly. I will have to look into that further. Okay. The comment you made about XP rep for so-called zerg-guilds is just wrong from the current build. The guild XP is limited to a total amount per day. Yeah, I already said that. I already said that. Thank you. I am wrong for something I already said about an hour ago on the show. Great. With the revamp of 1 to 60 content, will professions be changed in the basis that you will need less materials in order to craft? And will they change the way professions level to make it quicker or easier? It is already quicker or easier. If you craft, like, blue items and stuff, you can get multiple skill-ups from that. As to lowering the amount of resources required, I don't think they have any plans on doing that. But there have been some remodeling on the lower ends, hopefully to make some of the crafting stuff a little bit more useful. And that is indeed what they should do, without a question. I'm not going to answer yet another mage question. That's getting a little bit dull. What? Do you know what will happen to the classes? What do you mean? Hunters get focus, etc. They all have changes. Like, say, for instance, the Warlock Soul Shard change. Or the Balanced Druid Eclipse Bar change. It's not really a change per se. It was kind of already in the game, but they've expanded on it. Paladins get that holy power thing. So, yeah, there have been some changes, but not everybody gets a major mechanic change. They should. When do you think the Cataclysm cinematic is going to be out? I think they will show the proper cinematic at BlizzCon, honestly. I would be very shocked if they didn't. Do you think that having harder dungeons in Cataclysm is going to cause people to complain? Of course it's going to cause people to complain. People are going to whine and bitch about literally everything. All I hope is that Blizzard sticks to its goddamn guns and says, suck less, be less terrible, learn to play. That's all that's needed, really, isn't it? One last question, then we'll shout out, then we'll play a song, and then I will inflict upon you the awfulness of live Show Me How to Raid, because the majority of people asked for it, and I love embarrassing myself on the air. One last question. I'll take it from the IRC. No, I've already answered that one. Not doing that. I can't talk about that. I would take ages. No, I don't care about that either. Wow, these are bad questions. Seriously. Come up with something that doesn't suck. Ah, here's one. We know Archaeology will give us the Karaji mount, who can... But do you think that maybe... I'm sorry, I'm having to translate this. This is not the best English I've ever read. Do you think that they'll maybe add the Zulian Tiger and Raptor from Zul'Gurub? Very likely, or at least a variation on. I hope they don't add the same one. I hope they change it in terms of at least the colour scheme or add some little doodads to it. But yeah, I think they will change it. And I think they will put it in as an Archaeology thing. I don't see why not. That seems perfect. Unless, of course, unless they're now skeletal raptors. In which case, a skeletal tiger. Alright, a skeletal tiger. That would be pretty badass. Okay, shout-out time, folks. Send them in. The Murloc at CynicalBrit or gmail.com, whichever you prefer. I'd prefer Gmail. It gets there quicker. Or you can send it over Twitter, or you can send it over IRC. I can't really take them from the tiny chat, like I said before, because it just doesn't work out so well. But in the meantime, I'll do shout-outs to those of you... Oh, wow, Soki. TB, what's your favourite change in Cataclysm? Nice. Yeah, okay, I'll answer that because you actually put some effort into that. That's some good writing. Why did you write it in pink? Can you explain that to me? What's my favourite change in Cataclysm? Dungeons that I can't roll over by just putting my face to the keyboard, kind of like this, and rolling backwards and forwards. Actually, let me demonstrate what face rolling actually is. So, here we go. This will do. So, I have this keyboard right here. This is a demonstration of a Death Knight doing a Wrath of the Lich King dungeon on a Microsoft Comfort Curve keyboard. I'm going to have to raise the hat here. There we go. Roll the face, roll the face. Oh, epic, wonderful, fantastic. That's what it is. Useless keyboard. Right. Okay, people on here. Farseer, do you have Warhams there? And are there Spec Marines? If they are Spec Marines, I'm not impressed. Keck, Soki. Soki's gonna... He's some kind of ninja. That's pretty impressive. Murden, your hat. Not up to snuff, mate. You need a better hat? Look at that. What kind of hat is that? Pfft. You need a real hat like this one, a man's hat. Let me zoom in to show you just how to handle it. Look at this. You see the little thing around the rim right there? Yes, very nice. Tailored. Stylish. Hef. Is that a chicken on your head? That's multiple hats, I must say. You're very greedy with your hat. I can endure that. It's fair enough. You need multiple hats in order to try and match the greatness of this hat. King. What the fuck? Finnegan. I must thank you, by the way, for hiding your ugly face. It is so wonderful. You have a great selection of masks in order to do that. Bacon Strip is advancing. Yes, is advancing the number of hats there. It's very impressive. That's what, 7, 8, 9 maybe? It's good stuff. R&A. You're a suitable replacement for Nagranol. You are metal enough. I'm impressed. Your headbanging is good, sir. We shall have to do a little bit more later on. Antidote is apparently preparing for war by the looks of it. Either that or he's flying some kind of aircraft. I can't really tell. And Dark Lady is somehow brave enough to come back for a third time. And nice hair. Very epic, one might say. Yes, I did just say... That's a killer purple. That's even more purple than my shirt, and that's impressive. Right, what have we got? Oh my god, the spam. Shout out to Sedai and Exodar US. A shout out to Meza Holy, who is currently leveling a troll hunter named Meowth. A shout out to the 10-Bun Hammer, the new Cataclysm legendary. Yes, quite. And a shout out to my guild knights around all the US. That's from Seancaster. Let's speed this up a bit. Shout out to Angelo. Onin finally realized that Angelo is a man. A shout out to Nerds Are Sexy Too for being back, but sad that she can't get a broadcasting spot. Yes, we do need to work on that. A shout out to all the fellow trolls, especially the Shaman. That's from Ayumu. A shout out to Darkonian, who has won 10 arena matches in a row. 10, you say? Huh, I thought it was...
Not one, but 2.
Wow, 10. Very impressive. What else do we have? Now that's a question. We can't have that. Shout out to me for actually joining IRC. That's from Slayer Isaac. Yes, you may have it. You may have it. What else do we have? Shout out. Please mark your shout out as actual shout outs, by the way. It's really hard to find them when you don't. It's really confusing. It gets mixed in with everything. I need to actually update my account right here. Check mail now on the Murloc at cynicalbrit.com. There we go. What server will the Troll Guild be on? Anchorage EU is the simple answer to that. Refresh my Twitter. There we go. Many more. Many more. Shout out must go out to Hatterson. And a shout out to Ralph for creating the alternate chat solution that may very well, in fact, be what we use in future. A shout out to my new guild on Stormscale called Bacon Frog Dungeon Squad. Galani asks when I'll activate status bar. Never, because it makes you mad. I'm done, folks. Thank you very much for listening to the show. I'm going to play a song while I prepare to deafen all of you in a horrible manner. Now, some of you might wonder why I have to do it in this ghetto fashion. I'm going to actually have to play the backing track through the speakers because Sam Broadcaster would mean that my voice was out of sync, which would be even more crazy. So I'm going to play a track that is good, and then I'm going to ruin a track that wasn't all that good to begin with. Thank you ever so much for listening to the show, ladies and gentlemen, as I prepare for my embarrassment in front of thousands in front of the internet. I have no shame! What can we play? Good tracks, many good tracks. So many good tracks that are available. I think a little bit of Captain Dan might be in order, you know. Yes. Why not? This tongue, or indeed this song, whichever you prefer. It contains strong language. It's called Mutiny. Enjoy.
Captain
morning, Dan. Shouldn't we go back to port?
Back to port? Who do you think is running this ship, you scurvy sea dog?
But we've been sailing for over 10,000 days.
Come over here and I'll kill you on the spot. When you're on the high seas and your crew throws a fit to head for the shores, what you gonna do? When there's mutiny aboard and your crew draws their swords, they say they wanna quit, but they can't do shit. I'm a real pirate, y'all foe, y'all foe. I'm a real pirate, y'all foe, y'all foe. I'm gonna kill you with my shank or make you walk the plank or cut off your hand, as a rep, you're bad. Years ago, they tried to steal my show. I'll never know how many lashes on their back I dispose. All the rum had been depleted. The whole crew was cheated. The shares of their weird sad state of affairs. They didn't really take kindly to follow me blindly. They all ganged up to sell it finally. How many months had it been since we'd seen our kid? I don't care, you landlubbers. Don't get under my skin. Never will a lover just united as your mother. She's a whale set sail on the back of her rudder. Give me her turning home to life and cover the stones. Lead to the treasure map of Davy Jones. If it's so easy to defeat me, then girl, don't try to beat me. Hit you in the face with my Canada mates. You're a true disgrace and you're out of your place. This ship is a ship that nobody takes. When you're on the high seas and your crew throws a fit to head for the shores, what you gonna do? When there's mutiny aboard and your crew draws their swords, they say they wanna quit, but they can't do shit.
So you haven't fed your crew for 100 days. Kept them killing, even on the holidays. Sail your ship through the middle of a hurricane. So fewer men remain alive to complain if you catch the slightest whiff of mutiny in the air. Cause the crew is a starving or wants a fair share. You've got to show them who's boss before it's opportune for them to stab you, drown you, or leave you maroon.
When you're on the high seas and your crew throws a fit to head for the shores, what you gonna do? When there's mutiny aboard and your crew draws their swords, they say they wanna quit, but they can't do shit. I'm a real pirate, y'all foe, y'all foe. I'm a real pirate, y'all foe, y'all foe. I'm gonna kill you with my shank or make you walk the plank or cut off your hand as a reprimand.
You have been listening to the podcast and archive of Blue Plz, WoW's #1 shock jock show, only on cynicalbrit.com. We'd love to hear from you, so feel free to leave a comment on